Well, you all like that basis video, didn't you? Well, today I have another video relating to locomotive bases. Today we shall focus on another 3 engines and an update on the possible basis for the red engine. I will also note that I shall refer to wheel arches as splashers throughout the video, as that is the official and correct term. And I know not everyone knows that, so I'm getting that out of the way now. So, let's begin. In Troublesome Trucks, there was a little blue tank engine who arranged James's train. Thanks to a Sodor Island's fan site post, we know that Christopher Audrey implied that this was a Wellsworth and Sudbury locomotive. It more closely matches Wellsworth and Sudbury number 3, though there are some notable details which implies it isn't, such as the lack of splashers on the front wheels, but there are splashers on the middle wheel, which does imply a leading wheel. The side tanks also appear to be extended like the later batch of A2s, and, well, Wellsworth and Sudbury number 3 would have been rebuilt into a tender engine more than likely by this point, which pretty much rules him out completely, or them out or her out. Now, Thomas Wiki does say the locomotive appeared in another illustration in the book, though the design changes from him having shorter side tanks to extended side tanks, and appears to be an 06 there, which is really lined up with the next illustration. So I doubt they are actually the same locomotive. Anyway, without further ado, let's get to the possible basis of this loco. My first consideration was the LMS Fowler dock tank, but these don't exactly match up continuity wise. James the Red Engine, the book where Troublesome Trucks is from, takes place in 1925, but the dock tank wasn't built until 1928. It also has outside cylinders and a lack of splashers or leading bogie wheels. I also considered the South Devon Railway's 240 locomotives, and while they did exist by the time of 1925, they do lack splashers and extended side tanks, though they don't have domes and fit fairly well. The GWR 455 class does also work for the most part, though probably not as well. The dome is at the centre of the boiler, while the tank engine lacks a dome at the front and presumably the middle, depending on how big the engine is. It also lacks splashers and an extended side tank. There are also the LNER F4 and F5s, and again, they did exist by 1925, though they still lack many details that a little tank engine has, such as the splashers and extended side tanks, and the dome is at the front. The F3s could again be possible, but again, the dome is up front, the side tanks aren't extended, and there are no splashers. None of these locos really fit perfectly. I'd probably say the South Devon Railway's 240 locomotives or the GWR 455 class are probably the closest, though it is very hard to find a locomotive with extended side tanks, and it's going to be probably even harder to find a 240, 242, 260 or whatever kind of wheel arrangements tank engine for shunting with extended side tanks that also has splashers. So it is difficult to find a definitive design. In Thomas the Tank Engine, specifically the story Thomas and the Trucks, we see a locomotive who looks a lot like Gordon, but if you look closely at his wheel arrangement, he's an 060 with inside cylinders compared to Gordon, who is a 462 with outside cylinders. The locomotive is an 060, as we just established, appearing to have no special firebox shape, having no splashers, and has a sloped running board at the front and back. The GER 552 locomotives were built in 1882, so let's cover the accurate details to start with. First off, they lack splashers, have very large wheels, and the correct cab shape, though the blue engine lacks an opening in their cab, though let's be honest, that isn't very realistic. It has a sloped running board, which is a big feature of the original blue engine. Now let's get to the differences. The dome is near the front rather than the centre, and the funnel is tall. To be fair, it could have been rebuilt a little while it was on Sodor for improvements, as it was around 40 years old at that time. Though what puts the nail in the coffin is that all of them were withdrawn and scrapped between 1904 and 1906, which pretty much kills the chances of one being around in 1925. Even if it was loaned by the Wellsworth and Sudbury, Tidmouth, Knapford and Elsbridge Light Railway, the Sodor Mainland Railway, or bought and loaned by the Cronk and Harwick Railway, and stayed on the island up to 1925, which I doubt, and there hasn't really been anything to imply those railways ever loaned engines. It always seemed to be the NWR who were loaning engines in their early days. The LNER J39 locomotives could work despite the obviously different running boards, which I don't consider the shape to be an issue, just that the dip placement is there and is in the right place. I would say this might be it. However, it has splashers, the dome is towards the front, and they weren't built until 1926, a year after when the tender engine was seen on Sodor, so pretty much we can't use them. The IVAT J1 and J2, otherwise known as the GNR Class J21, actually fit into the timeline. The J1s being built in 1908 and 11 of them survived into the 50s. And the J2s being built in 1912 and were withdrawn and scrapped in 1953 and 1954. Now they do have splashers, which is an issue. The funnel is taller and the dome is absolutely massive. Definitely bigger than the dome the locomotive likely has, which is more than likely much smaller. Though it is hidden, so you never know, but given the obstruction, I would assume we would at least see the edges of the dome if it was bigger. But you never know. The IVAT and Gresley J6, otherwise known as the GNR Class 22, not 22, the GNR Class J22, sorry, is similar to the J1 and J2s. They were built by 1925. A plus is the dome is centred, though it has splashers and the funnel's too skinny and maybe a tiny bit too tall. The Gresley J38 is very possible, and this is our first and only loco on this list, without there really being any issues, aside from the dome, which could be a bit more centred. So which locomotive? If you can cobble together a reasonable explanation for the GR 552 to still exist by 1925, and explain why it looks slightly different, then go ahead with it. Though I'd suggest one of the IVATs and Gresley J classes. The Gresley J38 is an almost perfect match. If you have gone through the entire Railway series, you might be wondering where this locomotive was. That is because he appeared once in a pop-up book version of Troublesome Trucks, and instead of the little blue tank engine arranging the train, it was him instead, this dark green engine. I personally think this was a Wellsworth and Sudbury locomotive, though that is headcanon. The locomotive has a notable saddle tank, dome, circular cab windows, and it is difficult to tell, but he may or may not be inside cylinder, though I'll play it very loose with that as we can't really tell. The GWR 1392 class could work, and if we go with the idea that this engine was a Wellsworth and Sudbury loco, it would fit in, as the Wellsworth and Sudbury's number 3 originated from the Cornwall Minerals Railway, which this locomotive also originated from. Though the actual green engine notably lacks a brass dome and the boxes the possible basis has. The GWR 1361 class could again be one that works, and it was based on the 1391 class, so you don't lose that CMR connection if you want that. The dome isn't brass, and while it does mostly match the dark green engine, it does have the steam pipes, which the green engine lacks. Thanks a lot, comment section, for clarifying what the side things were. I heard there was smoke box support. Glad I didn't include that in the video. The Avonside 060 S3 locomotive is another one that could possibly work, being built between 1906 and 1926, though it does have a fancy dome design that the green engine lacks, alongside the dome being brass, and it has the boxes, and I assume they are sandboxes, but do correct me if I'm wrong. The Cork and Bandon 060 Bayer saddle tank is also possible, and were built by 1924, being built as early as 1881 up until 1894. They have a large dome, though it is difficult to determine if it is brass. Though it does have the boxes, and the smoke box is very round compared to the dark green engine. The North and Pembrokeshire. The North and Pembrokeshire and Fishguard Railway 060 ST could again work. They have a large dome, but they again have the boxes, and the smoke box is very round, though they were built in 1878. Honestly, out of all of these, I'd say the GWR 1361 or the GWR 1392 class. And again, if you think the dark green engine is a relative ancillary engine, then the CMR connections are pretty nice. So I have a quick update on the red engine, or as fans like to call him, Alid Greedy. If you watched the end of my last Basis video, I made it clear I wasn't the happiest with the bases I chose for it, since I have found two other locomotives that could possibly work for it. The first is the Highland Railway Jones Goods class, that's a mouthful, built in 1894. The splashes don't exactly match, though for Thomas, let's be honest, they aren't really that big of an issue. James's splashes are very different to his basis, though the smoke box shape doesn't really match, and it is a 460 locomotive compared to the red engine, who has a 462 wheel arrangement. The LNER B13, otherwise known as the NER Class S, is another one that fits closely, though the framing is different, and the red engine doesn't have this thing on the boiler, I've forgotten what it's called. And of course, the wheel arrangement being 460 rather than 462. Though I do like this class as a possible basis for the red engine due to the cylinder placement, very reminiscent of the original 3 railway engines illustrations. And so that wraps up this video. A very inconclusive and disappointing start, yet progressively got better in my opinion. I am only 2 videos in, and I am already running low on locomotives to cover in Thomas. I'll have to cover the engine that was intended to be Henry but isn't Henry because of the timeline, won't I? I do have some ideas, such as 3 of the blue engines. You got that one engine that looks like Henry but isn't Henry if you're going by the art style of the artist. You've got that engine, that blue engine going by the shed that was probably meant to be Edwards but wasn't, but turns out it's not Edwards because of the footplate tip. You also got that blue tank engine that I mentioned earlier that probably isn't the one as seen in Troublesome Trucks. You also have the Itsy Bitsy Speeder from All Engines Go, which I think that one would actually be kind of fun to do, I'll be honest. You have not Henry, You have Percy, and I may even cover some of the Mid-Sodal Railways engines, though I can't guarantee that. I have considered branching out to the basis of engines from Ivor the Engine. So you have been wanting to... I do put a community post out there, you are interested in Ivor the Engine content on my channel. So would you be interested in a Ivor the Engine video where I go over the basis of Ivor and a few other engines from Ivor? Because there are actually a few other engines from Ivor if you watched episode 2 of the original Black and White series. Even if you stay now, I'm going to probably do it anyway. But yeah. Those are a few ideas, but again, that's only really going to last me a few videos, let's be honest, because I'm doing about 3 of this year. So, anyway, thank you for watching, and goodbye.